The city was dead. So, once home to 10 million people, now belonged to the walking corpses. Kang Tae moved through the broken streets of Incheon with 37 survivors behind him. They walked in silence. They had learned that noise meant death. Every footstep was careful. Every breath was quiet. The sun was setting, and darkness would bring more danger. Tae was not always a leader. 3 weeks ago, he was a combat engineer working on bridge repairs. He had a small apartment and a cat named Bori. The cat was gone now. Everything was gone. But Tae survived, and somehow, people started following him. He did not ask for this responsibility. It found him anyway. The outbreak started in a government facility beneath Seoul. Nobody knew the full truth, but rumors spread fast among survivors. Scientists had found something. They tried to use it. They failed. The virus they called Strain Omega escaped and spread through the city in hours. The infected did not stay dead. They rose again, hungry and fast. Within 3 days, Korea fell. Tae raised his hand, and the group stopped. Ahead, a shape moved between 2 burned cars. He watched carefully. The figure stumbled forward, arms hanging loose, head tilted at a wrong angle. Its skin was gray and torn. Dark blood covered its mouth. Just one. They could handle one. Tae pulled his metal pipe from his belt and moved forward slowly. The zombie turned toward him, sensing movement. It opened its mouth and made a wet, choking sound. Then it charged. Tae swung hard. The pipe connected with the creature's skull, and it dropped. He hit it twice more to make sure. Behind him, nobody made a sound. They had seen this many times before. They continued walking toward the coast. Survivors spoke of ships still floating in the water. Military vessels that held defensive lines. It was their only hope. The land belonged to the dead now. Across the city, in what remained of Korea National University, a young woman named Yoon Hana sat alone in a dark laboratory. She had not slept in 2 days. Around her, computers hummed softly, running on emergency power. On the screen before her, data scrolled endlessly. Hana was a virologist. She studied diseases for a living. When the outbreak began, she locked herself inside the lab and began working. While the world burned outside, she examined infected tissue samples under her microscope. What she found terrified her. Strain Omega was not natural. The virus contained markers that should not exist, patterns that no earthly disease had ever shown. She cross-referenced her findings with classified government files she had managed to access. 6 months ago, something crashed into the Yellow Sea. The government recovered it in secret. They brought it to the facility beneath Seoul. They found alien material. They tried to weaponize it. And they destroyed everything. Hannah saved her research to a small hard drive and put it in her pocket. The world needed to know the truth. But first, she needed to escape. The building was surrounded by infected. She could hear them scratching at the doors below. She found an old radio in a storage closet and sent out a distress signal. Maybe someone would hear. Maybe someone would come. It was a small hope, but it was all she had. Miles away, Tae's group found shelter in a collapsed subway station. They would rest here until morning. Guards took positions at the entrances, while others shared what little food they had. A young man approached Tae. His name was Choi Jun, and he had been a bus driver before the fall. "There is someone down there," Jun said quietly, pointing deeper into the tunnel. "I heard movement. Should we check?" Tae nodded and gathered 3 others. They moved into the darkness with flashlights and weapons ready. The tunnel was cold and wet. Water dripped from cracks in the ceiling. Their lights cut through the black, revealing empty tracks and fallen debris. Then the beam found something unexpected. A teenage boy sat against the wall. He was thin and dirty, wearing torn school clothes. His eyes were wide with fear. But that was not what made Tae stop. The boy had bite marks on his arms. fresh ones. Multiple wounds that should have turned him into one of them hours ago. But he sat there, breathing, alive. Human. Please do not kill me, the boy whispered. I do not know why I'm still okay. They bit me many times, but I did not change. Tay stared at the wounds. This was impossible. Nobody survived a bite. Nobody. What is your name? Tay asked. Park Day. The boy replied. They brought Day back to the group. People kept their distance, afraid he might turn at any moment. But minutes passed, then hours, and Day remained human. Something about him was different. Something protected him. As night fell completely, Tay heard something through the static of an old radio one of his people carried. A woman's voice, weak but clear. She spoke of research, of alien origins, of the truth behind the outbreak. She begged for rescue. Tay listened to the full message. Then he made a decision. We go get her, he said. Some protested. The path was dangerous. They were so close to the coast. But Tay knew that whoever this woman was, whatever she had discovered, it might be the key to everything. They would rest tonight. Tomorrow, they would rescue the scientist. Tomorrow, they would take the first step toward fighting back. Outside the station, the dead wandered through empty streets. They did not know that somewhere in the darkness, hope still lived. Small and fragile, but alive, humanity was not finished yet. 2 weeks had passed since the fall of Seoul. The world had grown darker. Kang, Tay led his group through the ruins of a coastal town. They had rescued Yoon Hana from the university 5 days ago. The mission cost them 3 lives, but they got her out along with her research. Now they moved toward the sea, toward the ships that might save them. Hana walked beside Tay, clutching her hard drive like a holy object. She had told him everything. The alien probe, the government experiments, the truth that nobody wanted to believe. Tay listened without judgment. In this new world, nothing seemed impossible anymore. But the zombies were changing too. The standard infected were bad enough. Slow ones that shambled, fast ones that ran, all of them hungry for living flesh. But now there were new things. Worse things as we first saw a Reaper 3 days ago. It was tall and thin, almost skeletal, with arms that had grown into long blades of bone. It moved faster than any human could run. It killed 2 of their people before they brought it down with gunfire. Since then, they had seen more. The Reapers hunted in packs. Now. Then came the bloaters. Huge, swollen corpses filled with infected gas. When they died, they exploded, spreading the virus through the air. The group learned to shoot them from far away and hold their breath. The worst discovery came yesterday. They found a hive mother. It sat in what used to be a shopping center. A mountain of flesh made from hundreds of fused bodies, pulsing and growing. It birthed new infected constantly. They poured from its mass like insects from a nest. The group ran and did not stop running for hours. Strain Omega was evolving. It was learning, and it was creating an army, but there was something even more terrifying. The LPHS.Tay first noticed them during a supply raid. 3 infected stood on a rooftop, watching the group move through the streets below. They did not attack. They did not chase. They just watched with intelligent eyes. Then they disappeared. That night, the group walked into an ambush. Zombies had blocked both ends of a narrow street. They attacked from all sides in coordinated waves. It was a trap. Someone had planned it. During the chaos, a woman appeared from the shadows. She was small and quick, with short black hair and a rifle on her back. She killed 6 infected in seconds with a pistol, each shot finding its target perfectly. Follow me. She shouted. She led them through a hole in a building wall, through a series of connected basements, and out into safety. Half the group survived. It was better than it should have been. Her name was Choi Nari. She was a former military sharpshooter who had been surviving alone since the outbreak. She joined their group without being asked. Tay did not complain. They needed fighters. 2 days later, they reached the coast and saw the most beautiful sight of their lives. Ships floated on the gray water. Military vessels, fishing boats, cargo ships, all connected by ropes and walkways. A floating city of survivors. At its center sat a massive warship with the name KN's Guanjeto painted on its hull. A small boat came to collect them. Soldiers helped them aboard, checking each person for bites. When they saw Day's wounds, they raised their weapons. Tay stepped between them and the boy. "He's immune," Tay said firmly. "He was bitten days ago. He never turned. He might be important." The soldiers hesitated but eventually agreed to let them board. They were taken to the warship to meet its captain. Captain Beek-sum was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. But his back was straight and his voice was strong. He had served in the Navy for 30 years. When the outbreak hit, he gathered every ship he could find and created this floating sanctuary. 8,000 people lived here now. Tay told him about Day. Hannah showed him her research. The captain listened carefully. "So this was not an accident," Sung said slowly. "Someone sent this plague to us. Something," Hannah corrected. "Not human. We found pieces of the probe. The markings matched nothing on Earth." Sung was quiet for a long moment. Then he ordered his crew to bring the probe fragment they had recovered from a crashed helicopter. It was small, no bigger than a man's hand, but it glowed faintly with strange light. Hannah examined it and confirmed her theory. This was alien technology. The virus was a weapon, sent from somewhere far away. "They want our world," she said. "They sent the virus to clear it out. Like farmers preparing a field. Then we are weeds," Nari said with a bitter smile. "And they will find that weeds do not die easily." That night, the Alphas attacked the fleet. They came from below. Hundreds of Reapers swimming through the dark water, climbing the ship hulls with their blade arms. Alarms screamed. Gunfire erupted across the floating city. Tay fought on the deck of the Guangedo, swinging his pipe at any infected that climbed over the railing. Nari stood at his back, firing shot after shot until her ammunition ran dry. Then she pulled a knife and kept fighting. 2 ships burned and sank. Hundreds died. But by morning, the attack was over. The Alphas had underestimated them. In the medical bay, Hannah made a discovery. She had taken blood from Day and injected a tiny amount into an infected corpse. The virus inside the body died. The mutation reversed. Day's blood was not just immunity. It was a cure. Hannah looked at the young boy who sat quietly in the corner. He was skinny and scared and barely 16 years old. But inside his veins flowed the salvation of humanity. "We can fight back now," she whispered. For the first time since the outbreak began, Tay allowed himself to feel something he had almost forgotten. Hope. 6 weeks after the fall, humanity began to fight back. The Korean flotilla was no longer alone on the sea. Radio signals crackled with voices from around the world. Japan had built a fortress of ships near Okinawa. American aircraft carriers launched bombing runs over infected cities. European navies pushed back from the North Sea. Russia had burned half its own land to stop the spread. The virus had touched every nation. But every nation still stood. On the Guangedo, Captain Beek-sum coordinated with military leaders across the globe. Maps covered the walls of his command room. Red marks showed infected zones. Blue marks showed survivor strongholds. There was more red than blue, but the blue was growing. Hannah worked without rest in a makeshift laboratory. She had learned how to turn Day's blood into a weapon, a special spray that could be released over large areas. When infected breathed it in, the virus in their bodies died. They became docile, collapsed, and stopped moving forever. but she needed gallons of the substance to make a difference. And Day was only one person. The boy gave blood every day. Too much blood. His skin grew pale. His hands shook. He never complained, but Kang Tae saw the cost. They were draining him dry. We need another way. Tae said to Hana one night. I am working on it, she replied. His blood contains special proteins. If I can copy them in a laboratory, we will not need him anymore. But I need time. And equipment. And samples from a hive mother. Tae understood what that meant. They had to go back to land. They had to attack. A meeting was held in the captain's quarters. Soon, Tae, Nari, Hana, and a new face joined them. Her name was Lee Yuri. She had been a ground forces general when the outbreak began. She led 40,000 civilians to safety through infected territory, fighting every step. Now she commanded the land forces that remained. Yuri spread a map on the table. Her finger pointed to Seoul. The largest hive mother is here, she said. In the center of the old city. Our scouts estimate it produces 10,000 infected per day. If we destroy it, we cut off their reinforcements for the entire peninsula. It was a bold plan. Dangerous. Possibly suicidal. We hit them from the sea, Soong said. Every ship, every missile, every gun we have. We blast a path through the hordes. I lead a ground team into the city, Tae added. We plant explosives inside the hive mother itself. I am coming with you, Nari said immediately. Do not argue. Tae did not argue. He had learned that was pointless with her. Hana would stay on the ship to analyze any samples they recovered. They would stay too, protected and rested. Yuri would command the overall operation from a helicopter overhead. They spent 3 days preparing. Ships were repaired and armed. Soldiers trained. Explosives were gathered. On the morning of the 4th day, the fleet moved toward Korea. The coast appeared through morning fog. Smoke rose from dead cities. The beaches were covered with wandering infected. Thousands of gray shapes moved aimlessly, waiting for prey. Captain Soong gave the order. Fire. The fleet erupted. Missiles screamed through the air. Shells crashed into the shore. Explosions tore through the zombie hordes like fire through dry grass. The bombardment continued for 30 minutes. When it stopped, the beach was empty, burning. Landing boats hit the sand. Tae's team of 50 soldiers moved inland. They traveled in armored vehicles when possible, on foot when necessary. The roads were cracked and broken. Buildings had collapsed into rubble. Nature was already reclaiming what humans had lost. They encountered resistance within the first hour. Reapers attacked from the ruins, fast and deadly. Gunfire cut them down, but each fight cost ammunition and time. The Alphas were watching from somewhere, planning. Nir I spotted them first. 3 figures standing on a distant rooftop. She raised her rifle and fired. One fell. The others vanished. They are coordinating the defense, she said. We need to move faster. The team pushed deeper into Seoul. The ruins grew worse. Bodies littered the streets. Some were old and rotting. Others were fresh. The infected were everywhere now, drawn by the noise of battle. Overhead, Yuri's helicopter circled the city. She directed the fleet's fire to clear paths for the ground team. Explosions bloomed across the urban landscape. The dead burned by the thousands. Finally, they reached the hive mother. It filled an entire city block. A mountain of twisted flesh, pulsing with horrible life. Thousands of bodies had merged together into one massive creature. Smaller infected crawled across its surface like insects. New zombies pushed out from openings in its mass, wet and screaming. The sight made several soldiers vomit. Tae felt his stomach turn, but forced himself to focus. We plant the charges here, and here, he said, pointing at the creature's base. We have 15 minutes before detonation. Move. The team split into 3 groups. They ran toward the hive mother while covering fire kept the infected back. Tay reached the creature's side and pressed explosives against its flesh. The surface was warm and wet. It moved slightly, like something breathing. He set the timer and ran Dot around him. The other teams did the same. Nari provided cover, her rifle cracking constantly. When her ammunition ran out, she pulled her pistol. When that emptied, she drew her knife. Everyone out, Tay shouted. Now, they sprinted toward the extraction point. Behind them, the timers counted down. Infected poured from every direction, trying to stop them. The explosions came like thunder. The hive mother screamed. The sound was not human. It was not animal. It was something older and stranger. The scream echoed across Seoul and beyond. And then the creature collapsed. Every infected within 50 kilometers suddenly stopped. They stood frozen, confused, as if they had lost something vital. The connection was broken. The hive mother was dead. Tay looked back at the destruction. Then he looked at his team. They had won. Seoul was not free, that they had proven something important. Humanity could fight back. Humanity could win. And this was only the beginning. 8 weeks after the fall, the world began to unite. The destruction of the Seoul hive mother sent a message across the planet. Humanity was not dead. Humanity was angry. And humanity was learning to fight. Communication networks came back online slowly. Satellites that had gone silent began transmitting, again as engineers in floating cities and mountain bunkers worked to restore them. Leaders from 12 nations formed what they called the Alliance of the Living. They shared resources, research, and strategies through encrypted channels. Yoon Hana's cure formula spread worldwide. Laboratories in Australia, Brazil, and Norway began producing the substance. Planes dropped it over infected cities. The dead stopped moving by the millions. But the alphas were not stupid. The intelligent infected had watched the Seoul assault. They had learned from their defeat. Now, they retreated from major population centers, dragging their hordes into remote regions where bombs and ships could not reach them easily. They hid in the Siberian forests, the Amazon jungle, the Saharan desert. They were regrouping, planning. On the Gwangedo, Kante rested for the first time in weeks. His body ached from the Seoul mission. 19 soldiers had died under his command. He knew each of their names. He would carry them forever. Choi Nari found him on the deck one evening, staring at the sunset. "You did good," she said, standing beside him. "We all came home because of you." "Not all of us," Tay replied quietly. Nari was silent for a moment. Then she put a hand on his shoulder. "The ones we lost would want us to keep fighting. Honor them by winning." Tay nodded slowly. She was right. The war was not over. They could grieve when it ended. In the medical bay, a crisis was unfolding. Park Dae had collapsed. Hannah had pushed him too hard. The constant blood extraction had weakened his body beyond its limits. Now he lay unconscious on a hospital bed, pale as paper, barely breathing. Doctors worked to stabilize him, but the damage was done. Hannah sat outside the room, tears streaming down her face. She had treated him like a resource, not a person. A machine for producing cure. She had forgotten he was just a 16-year-old boy who was scared and tired and wanted to live. Tay found her there. He did not speak. He just sat beside her and waited. "I almost killed him," Hana whispered. "I was so focused on saving everyone else that I almost killed the one person who mattered most. Can you make the cure without him?" Tay asked. Hana wiped her eyes. "I have been working on synthetic proteins, copying what his blood does naturally. It is slower and harder, but yes, I think I can. We do not need to drain him anymore. Then we protect him now," Tay said. "He's not a tool. He's one of us." They woke 3 days later. He was weak but alive. When Hannah apologized, he smiled and told her he understood. He wanted to help save people. He was just glad they found another way. General Lee Yuri called a meeting of all senior officers. She had troubling news. Our intelligence teams intercepted Alpha communications, she said, displaying symbols on a screen. They are not random sounds. They are a language. And we decoded part of it. The room fell silent. It is a countdown, Yuri continued. They are waiting for something. We believe the original probe was a beacon. It sent a signal into space when it landed. 6 months ago, that signal was sent. And someone received it. Hannah felt her blood go cold. The virus was just the first wave. The real threat was still coming. How long do we have? Captain Soon asked. Unknown, Yuri replied. But based on the countdown pattern, we estimate weeks. Maybe a month. The Alliance of the Living mobilized immediately. Every factory that still worked began producing weapons. Every scientist worked on defenses. Every soldier trained harder. Tay volunteered to lead reconnaissance missions into Alpha territory. He and Nari spent 2 weeks in the Siberian wilderness, tracking infected movements and gathering intelligence. What they found was disturbing. The Alphas were building something. Massive structures of bone and flesh rose from the frozen ground. They looked almost like landing platforms. The infected were preparing to welcome their masters. We need to destroy these, Nari said, photographing the structures. There are hundreds of them around the world. Tay replied. We cannot get them all in time. Then we prepare for what comes next. They returned to the fleet with their findings. Yuri presented the information to the Alliance. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not wait to be attacked. They would strike first at whatever descended from the sky. Every warship was armed with the heaviest weapons available. Anti-aircraft batteries were constructed along coastlines. The cure was loaded into missiles designed to burst over large areas. If the newcomers were organic, maybe they could be killed the same way as the infected. They, now recovered, asked to help. Hana refused at first, but he insisted. I did not survive all of this to hide, he said. If something is coming, I want to fight too. They found a role for him. His blood was still useful for testing new weapons. Small samples, carefully taken, helped calibrate the cure missiles. He worked alongside Hana, no longer a resource but a partner. On the night before the expected arrival, Tay stood on the deck of the Guangado. The stars were bright above. Somewhere up there, something was falling toward Earth. Nari joined him, as she always did. Scared? She asked. Yes, Tay admitted. But I was scared when the outbreak started. I was scared in soul. Being scared does not stop us. I smiled slightly. When this is over, I want to find a quiet place. Maybe a farm. Grow vegetables. Never hold a gun again. Sounds nice, Tay said. I will help you build it. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. It is a promise, she said. Dawn came slowly. And with it came the ships. They came at dawn. The sky split open with light. Massive ships descended through the clouds, blocking out the rising sun. They were dark and angular, made of black metal and something that glowed with sickly green light. Each ship was the size of a small city. There were 7 of them, spreading across the globe like fingers of a giant hand. Yunhana watched from the deck of the Guangado. Her heart pounded in her chest. The architects, she whispered. That is what I will call them. They built this plague. They designed our extinction. The architects had expected a dead world. Their probe had sent confirmation months ago. Earth was infected. Humanity was dying. The crop was ready for harvest, but humanity had refused to die. The first architect ship landed in the ruins of Beijing. Its doors opened and creatures emerged. They were tall and thin, with too many limbs and skin like whetstone. They moved with terrible grace, carrying weapons that glowed with the same green light as their ships. Chinese survivors attacked immediately. Tanks fired. Missiles launched. The architects fell by the dozens, but they had thousands. And their weapons were worse. Green beams cut through tanks like paper. Explosions vaporized entire city blocks. The Chinese defense line collapsed in minutes. The architects advanced, harvesting the infected that had gathered to greet them. The zombies were their creation, their food source, their cattle. Across the world, the same scene repeated. Architect ships landed in North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Human forces met them everywhere. And everywhere, humans died, but they did not die quietly. Captain Baek Soong commanded the Pacific Fleet against an architect carrier approaching Korean waters. His ships fired everything they had: missiles, shells, torpedoes. The architect vessel shrugged off most of the damage, but it was slowing down all ships. Full attack, Soong ordered. Do not let them reach the shore. The battle lasted 6 hours. 3 warships sank. 2,000 sailors died. But the architect carrier crashed into the sea, burning. General Lee Yuri held Bisan, the last major city in Korea. 400,000 civilians sheltered behind her defensive lines. Architect ground forces attacked in waves. Supported by the infected they controlled like puppets. Yuri did not retreat. She met every attack with fire and steel. When ammunition ran low, soldiers fought with bayonets and bare hands. When positions fell, they counterattacked. Not one architect reached the civilian shelters. Hold the line. Yuri shouted through the radio. For every person behind us. For every life we protect. Hold the line. They held. In the chaos, Kang Tae and Choi Nari led a special mission. Intelligence had located an architect command ship landed in the ruins of Pyongyang. If they could reach it, they might find technology or information that could turn the tide. They moved through the destroyed city with a team of 20 soldiers. Architect patrols wandered the streets, accompanied by hordes of infected. Nari killed them silently with her rifle, while Tae guided the team through the rubble. They reached the ship as night fell. Its hull loomed above them like a mountain of black metal. Strange symbols covered its surface. A single entrance glowed at the base. Inside, they found horrors. The architects were processing human bodies, alive and dead, converting them into something else. Fuel, maybe, or food. Tae did not want to understand. They planted explosives throughout the ship, enough to destroy it completely. But as they prepared to leave, an architect found them. It was taller than the others. Its skin shifted colors like oil on water. It spoke in a voice that was not sound but pressure, pushing directly into their minds. Why do you resist? It asked. You were meant to end. All worlds end. This is the natural order. Tae raised his weapon. Maybe, he said. But not today. He fired. The creature stumbled back. Nari emptied her magazine into its chest. It fell. Run, Tae shouted. The team sprinted toward the exit. Behind them, the timers counted down. They cleared the ship's entrance just as the explosions began. The command ship died in fire. Its wreckage spread across Pyongyang like falling stars. And with it died the coordination for the Asian architect forces. Their attacks became confused, unorganized, but the war was far from over. On the Gwanggano, Hana worked through the night. She had analyzed architect tissue recovered from battles. They were organic, like she had hoped. And they were vulnerable to biological attacks. I can modify the cure, she told Captain Soong. Create a pathogen that targets their specific biology. It will kill them like it killed the infected. How long? Soong asked. 18 hours. Maybe less. You have 12, he replied. We cannot hold much longer. Hannah did not sleep. She did not eat. She worked with steady hands and a clear mind. They helped her, preparing samples and running tests. 12 hours later, she had the weapon. But they needed a delivery system. The pathogen had to reach the main architect ship, the largest vessel that hovered over Beijing, directing the entire invasion. "I will do it," they said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "My body is special," he continued. "The cure came from me. This pathogen is based on my blood. If I carry it directly to them, my body will amplify it, make it stronger. It is the best chance." Hannah started to protest, but Day raised his hand. "You saved me when you could have drained me dry. You taught me that my life mattered. Now let me use that life for something important, please." A helicopter was prepared, the last one they had. Day climbed inside, carrying containers of the pathogen. He looked back at the people who had become his family. "I will see you when this is over," he said. The helicopter flew toward Beijing. Architect ships tried to shoot it down. 2 missiles struck nearby, but the pilot was skilled and lucky. They reached the command ship. They jumped from the helicopter onto the ship's surface. He ran toward an opening, carrying the containers. Architect soldiers emerged to stop him. He dodged and weaved, smaller and faster than they expected. He reached the ship's central chamber. Inside, a massive architect sat on a throne of flesh. The leader, the one controlling everything. The Tay opened the containers and threw them at the creature. The pathogen sprayed across its body. Then he triggered the final device strapped to his chest, a dispersal bomb that spread the pathogen through the ship's air system. The effect was immediate. Architects collapsed. The ship's systems failed. The massive vessel began to fall from the sky. Day closed his eyes. The helicopter had circled back. The pilot saw Day standing on the falling ship. He dove, closer than should have been possible. Nari, who had somehow gotten aboard, reached out through the open door. Day jumped, their hands connected. Nari pulled him inside as the architect ship crashed into the earth below. He was alive, barely, burned and broken, but alive. Across the world, the pathogen spread. Architect after architect fell. Their ships crashed. Their armies collapsed. Within hours, the invasion was over. 6 months later, Tay stood on a hillside overlooking Seoul. The city was still in ruins, but construction had begun. Survivors returned. Life continued. I stood beside him, as she always did. Below them, Hana supervised a research facility built to study the architect technology. Day, scarred but smiling, helped organize supply deliveries. General Yuri addressed the world through restored broadcasts. Her words echoed across every survivor camp, every rebuilt city, every ship still floating on the water. "They came to harvest us," she said. "They found something else. They found a species that refuses to kneel, that refuses to break, that refuses to forget. Let any who watch the stars know this truth. Earth is not for the taking. We are humanity, and we are still here. In the ruins of the architect command ship, buried under rubble, a small data core flickered to life. It transmitted one final message into deep space before its power died. Primary harvest failed. Species reclassified. Threat level maximum. Recommend avoidance. Somewhere far away, something received the message and learned to be afraid.